It is time to take a look at the Miami Dolphins roster heading into NFL training camp. I am Nic Rohloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. Why are we doing this? Well, ESPN ranked all 32 teams' starting lineups and roster. They gave their projected lineups, top strength, weakness, X factor, non-starters to watch, and I wanted to react to what they had to say. But the first thing I got to mention, they ranked 1 through 32. They had the Miami Dolphins number 24 on their list in the NFL starting lineups ranked. Listen, I do not expect crazy things from this Dolphins team in 2025. I think they could sneak their way into a playoff spot if they're able to get off to a hot start and stay healthy because their schedule is relatively favorable early on. But then being ranked 24th behind the Raiders, behind the Patriots, I just find that incredibly disrespectful from ESPN, and I'll share some more thoughts on that at the end of today's show. But before we do all of that, I do want to get into the main part of the episode, but I do want to help us out here. I want to get the likes up here at Dolphins Today. I look back at last July 2024, we got 14,034 likes in the entire month. We still have about 5 or 6 days, maybe more, I can't do math, in the month of July, and we're almost there. Let's top last year's like number of July likes on this video alone. I think we can get there. All right, we'll start with the biggest strength on this roster outlook from ESPN. They labeled it as wide receiver. And I want to take a look exactly what Mike Clay of ESPN said on the Dolphins roster, saying Miami's receivers might have underperformed last season, but this Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle-led group is super talented and a good bet for a rebound. Dealing with injuries and 2 high safety looks at a league-high rate, Hill plummeted from 1,799 yards and 13 touchdowns in 2023 to 959 yards and 6 scores in 2024. And I don't agree with ESPN often, but I do agree here. I think the 2 best positions on the Miami Dolphins roster right now, before injuries and before the season actually gets underway, are your 2 offensive skill position groups, wide receiver and running backs. Those 2 are the top 2 spots, in my opinion. I mean, when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who, in my opinion, are still a top 5 wide receiver duo in the NFL, that's always going to help pace this group. But you signed Nick Westbrook-Ikhine to a 2-year deal, who I think is going to be very, very solid for Miami this year. Finally, a big-bodied wide receiver to be a red zone threat. He's an excellent run blocker as well. I love the addition of NWI, and I think high things of Malik Washington, the second-year wide receiver out of Virginia, as a potential gadget, slot, specialist type of player on this roster. So I do think the Dolphins' best group is either running back or wide receiver. The biggest weakness labeled by ESPN, no surprise, it's going to be your secondary, right? And that's the one thing you can't disagree with at all either, is that the worst part about this roster is that secondary. You lost Jalen Ramsey, you lost Javon Holland, you lost Kendall Fuller. It just isn't in a good spot considering they didn't make too many crazy replacements for those 3 players I mentioned. Again, let's see what ESPN had to say. Both starting safeties, Poyer and Holland, are gone, as well as top corners Kendall Fuller and Jalen Ramsey. Oddly, Miami didn't do much to replace them, adding Artie Burns, Ashton Davis, and Iafatu Melifonwu. 5th rounders Jason Marshall Jr. and Dante Trader Jr. were the only draft selections in the secondary. Slot corner Kader Kohu is pretty good, but the situation around him is a massive question. And I don't think we need to beat a dead horse here. We have been screaming from the rooftops ever since Miami did not draft a member of the secondary in the first 3 rounds of the 2025 NFL draft that this secondary is its biggest issue. Storm Duck and Cam Smith are your projected starters on the outside, and I just don't think that is sustainable throughout a 17-game season. As ESPN said, and I'll agree with, Kader Kohu is the top 10 nickel in the entire NFL. I like, obviously, adding Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I'm intrigued with Iafatu Melifonwu and Ashton Davis, but I can't comfortably say that this is a spot on the roster that I feel confident in. It is clearly the biggest weakness, and I think if we sit here a year from now and look at the disaster of a season that might have happened in 2025, it will likely be 1, because of injuries, or 2, well, the secondary was as bad as projected going into the year. A couple more things to get to here, but the Dolphins have the blank best roster in the NFL. ESPN thinks it's 24th. What is your thoughts? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. The X factor labeled by ESPN is the running game of Miami. So as I talked about the strength, I think the two biggest strengths on this roster is wide receiver and running backs, but they labeled the X factor as the running game. The Dolphins went from the most efficient running game in the league by EPA per play in 2023 to second worst last season. Run blocking played a big part of that as Miami dropped from 6th to 26th in run block win rate. But the running back performance dropped too. Devon Achane, Jalen Wright, and Raheem Mostert all recorded negative rush yards over expectation per NFL Next Gen Stats. And I will, once again, agree with ESPN. So I like what they're doing here in terms of labeling biggest weakness, biggest strength, X factor, and stuff like that. But I still don't get why they're ranked 24th. But when you think about this Dolphins run game, they lost a couple key players from 2023 to 2024. Obviously, the biggest one was Robert Hunt, top 5 guard in football, left you to go play for the Carolina Panthers. You didn't replace him well. You had Robert Jones and Liam Eichenberg. Well, now you replace those two in your starting 5 up front with James Daniels and Jonah Savinaya. That is a massive upgrade on your interior. Yes, you are losing Teron Armstead, and you'll have to rely on first-time full-year starter, second-round pick in 2024, Patrick Paul. But if this group is able to stay healthy, this offensive line is significantly better than last season. And I do agree that this O-line, this run game, is going to be the X factor. It can't get much worse from where it was last season. It will be the most improved part of this Dolphins football team. I think without a doubt, when you go through every single position group and you go through every phase of the game, to me, there's no question the run game, the offensive line will be significantly better from last season. I'm excited to watch this group up 5 work. Hopefully they stay healthy. The non-starter to know labeled by ESPN, it wasn't one specific starter. They actually labeled the backup linebacker duo of KJ Britt and Willie Gay Jr., 2 players Miami signed in NFL free agency. We'll break that down more here in a second. But this is why you subscribe to the channel. ESPN puts out content behind a paywall. We do not. Subscribe to the channel for daily content for free. We also go live every week. We also have watch parties during the preseason and the regular season. So join the family here at Dolphins Today. And I feel like I'm just repeating myself here, but I like the pick from ESPN about this being a non-starter to know. If there was another one out there, I think I would probably lean towards the safety room, even though it is a weakness. I think a non-starter to know could be a Iafatu Melifonwu, who is not projected to start, but that's neither here nor there. Aaron Schatz of ESPN on the linebacker duo, KJ Britt and Willie Gay. They built great depth at inside linebacker with these former starters. Gay is strong in pass coverage, while Britt had 72 combined tackles for Tampa Bay last season, but usually play 2 of these guys at a time, and the Dolphins also have Jordan Brooks and Tyrell Dodson. So I will say I am not completely sold on how much these 2 will play, barring injury, right? You have Tyrell Dodson. You have Jordan Brooks, a linebacker duo who I think is one of the most underrated duos in the entire NFL. But when you have 2 guys who have so much starting experience and different skill sets, like they mentioned, Brett is a run-stopping thumper. Willie Gay's an athletic sideline-to-sideline pass coverage linebacker. Like if Tyrell Dodson goes down, you can replace him with Willie Gay. If Jordan Brooks goes down, you can replace him with KJ Britt. You have one linebacker perfectly matched in skill sets to replace each of your starters. God forbid an injury occurs. The depth on your front 7 is so good. I like this group a lot. I think if Miami is going to exceed expectations in 2025, it is going to be because not the secondary was actually better than expected. That would certainly help. But the main reason would be, 1, your offense stayed healthy, and I'll continue to reference that point. But your defensive line in front 7 just took a massive step forward in their ability to be physical at the point of attack and generate pressure on quarterbacks. I mean, you have Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb returning. Chop Robinson was a stud last year. You drafted Kenneth Grant. You have a solid linebacker duo with great depth. This front 7 should be much improved in stopping the run, getting after the quarterback. I'm excited to watch a more physical Dolphins football team, especially on the defensive side of the football. We're going to get to the projected starting lineup here in a second, but I did want to tell everyone about this unbelievable deal. This Dolphins cutoff hoodie, usually double nickel 55, is available for double Treso. That's not a word. I'm making it up. $33 when you go to chatsports.com/MIA cutoff sale. That link's in the description of today's video. So take advantage. Go grab it today before sizes run out. All right, let's look at the projected starting lineup on both sides of the football via ESPN right now. And for whatever reason, I think, were hammered making this projection because they had 12 people starting on the defense and offense. Not a thing. But we'll just take out the extra running back. We'll start at the backfield with Tua Tagovailoa, Devon Achane, and Jalen Wright. Now, obviously, on a more consistent basis, the Dolphins are only probably going to be playing one running back. They do have the most two running back formations in the NFL, or at least top three behind the 49ers. So you do see it a lot. But this doesn't surprise me whatsoever. No shocks here. Tua, Devon Achane, Wright will be RB2. At position group, I'm a little bit surprised they put Darren Waller as the starting tight end. Would I project him to start as that lead guy week one? I wouldn't do it right now, if I'll be completely honest, just because I haven't seen him play football since 2023. He took a whole year off. I got to see him step on the football field and the practice field before I can label him a starter, but I do believe those are your top three wide receivers. And then no surprise at offensive line. ESPN had the same starting five that I do, but this does make it a little bit interesting for me that they did put Jonah Savvy-Nye at right guard. I think that's what Miami should do without a second of hesitation, but we know he got some snaps at left guard during minicamp and OTAs next to Patrick Paul. Now, James Daniels wasn't practicing as he's still recovering from that Achilles injury, should be ready to go by week one. But I will be fascinated, and I can't wait to see who ultimately is slotted in at left guard and right guard between James Daniels and Jonah Savvy-Nye. So that is what I think the majority of the starting lineup will be for this Dolphins offense this year. Miami, after having a top 10 offense in 22 and 23 under Mike McDaniel, was not very good in 2024. Will they return to being a top 10 offense in 2025? Type Y for yes or type N for no. Let's transition over to the defense now. The starting lineup, the front six. Now, their base package was nickel the most last season, so this is what is the base package in their nickel, in my opinion, and I think ESPN's spot on here. I think you will more than likely see Zach Sealer and Kenneth Grant as that defensive line duo on the interior. I think if you are fully healthy, Chop Robinson and Jalen Phillips are going to probably be the two edges that get more playing time. I would put Bradley Chubb at number 3, but I would have him behind Chop and Jalen. And obviously staying healthy, Tyrell Dodson and Jordan Brooks are going to be your starting linebacker duo, which we know Anthony Weaver likes to have two linebackers out there pretty much every single snap. Now let's transition to the secondary where things get a little bit more interesting. Safeties are Minkah Fitzpatrick and Ashton Davis, so ESPN gives the nod to Davis over Iafatu Melifonwu. Obviously, Kader Kohou's going to start, but they, like me, have Storm Duck and Cam Smith as the two starting boundary corners and Kohou playing in the slot. I'll be honest, if you look at the entire defensive line and secondary, I think this is where my money would be as well. If you put a gun to my head and ask who is on the field for the first snap of the season defensively and offensively with no injuries from now until week one, I think those 11 people on each side would be the ones that you will see. I think Davis is going to have a strong camp to get him that number 2 safety spot, but that's really up for grabs. We know Minkah's going to be one of them. Who is the other starting safety? Heck, they might run 3 safeties out there too. That's not out of the realm of possibility with how versatile Melifonwu and Ashton Davis and Minkah Fitzpatrick are. But I do think ESPN pretty much hit it right on the head in terms of projecting the Dolphins starting lineup. And that's what I'll say here. Final word on today's show. I agree with the starting lineup ESPN had. I agree with the biggest weakness, the biggest strength, X factor, and starting or non-starter that you need to know. I agree with everything. The only thing I don't agree with is that they're ranked 24th amongst NFL rosters. That would project Miami to have a top 10 pick in this draft. I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. If Tua is able to play 15 games this year, I'll give him 2 missed games. Plays 15. Dolphins will not be picking in the top 10. They will be absolutely in the playoff hunt. They will absolutely have 7 wins at bare minimum. Tua's 38-24 as a starter. He's not going to lose 10 games. It's just not going to happen as a starter. We haven't seen it. I think that's a little disrespectful to have us below New England. Las Vegas might be the most egregious. I mean, are we serious? The Raiders' secondary is atrocious. Their cornerback grouping is not good. Their top wide receiver is Jacoby Myers. No offense to Jacoby's a good ball player, but are we real here? Like, I think the Raiders being above Miami is the most egregious, but I don't really like the projection either from Arizona. Like, I'm not sold on the Cardinals. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased. I just think 24th was incredibly disrespectful. If Miami was like 20 or 19, well, I know it's only 4 or 5 spots higher, I'd feel much more like, okay, that's fine with me because that's where I think I would rank them. But 24th just feels incredibly disrespectful. I can't get over that. Can't do it. Well, folks, if you want unfiltered thoughts around the Miami Dolphins on a daily basis, channel for you. And if anything goes down during training camp, news, rumors, we'll have you covered here. So join the family. As always, Dolphins fans, go Fins.